February 1945, northern Germany. The war is ending, but the cold shows no mercy. Sergeant Robert Hayes kneels beside a broken truck, his breath forming white clouds in the frozen air. His hands, blackened with grease and numb from the cold, work frantically on an engine that refuses to cooperate. Around him, 4 other soldiers from the 761st Tank Battalion stamp their feet against the snow, trying to keep blood flowing through their veins. The landscape is desolate. Endless fields of white, skeletal trees, and the distant echo of artillery that never truly stops. They've been stranded here for 6 hours, separated from their unit after a German bombing raid scattered their convoy. No radio, no reinforcements, just 5 black men in the middle of enemy territory, invisible even to their own army. Hayes tightens a bolt with frozen fingers. He's 23 years old, but feels ancient. Birmingham, Alabama seems like another lifetime. He remembers his mother's voice, her warnings about going north, about enlisting. He remembers the Klan burning the Jenkins house when he was 12, the screams of children trapped inside, the way white folks just watched. Here, on the other side of the world, nothing has changed. Earlier that morning, they'd stopped at an Allied checkpoint for fuel. The white sergeant barely looked at them, just pointed to the back of the line. 3 hours waiting while other units passed through first. When Hayes asked about hot food, the man laughed. "You boys got your own mess kits, don't you?" No food, no fuel, no recognition. Private Jackson, the youngest of the group, sits on a crate cleaning his rifle. His hands shake, not just from cold. Last week, he watched a white lieutenant take credit for a German position that their unit had secured. The official report never mentioned the 761st. It never does. Hayes wipes his hands on a rag and pulls out a crumpled letter from his pocket. He's been writing to his mother for 3 days, unable to find the right words. Finally, he writes in small, careful letters, "We fight for freedom, Ma, just not ours, not yet." The wind picks up, cutting through their uniforms like razors. Hayes folds the letter and returns to the engine. The truck must run. Staying here means freezing to death, and nobody will come looking. They know this. The army will mark them as casualties. 5 more names lost in the chaos of war, and life will continue. But then, something. A sound beneath the wind. Faint. Almost imperceptible. Hayes stops, tilts his head. The others notice his stillness. "What is it, Sarge?" Jackson asks. Hayes raises his hand for silence. There it is again, clearer now. A thin, desperate cry. Harchild's voice, muffled by distance and snow. Private Wilson laughs nervously. "You sure it ain't the wind, Sarge? This place playing tricks on everybody." But Hayes knows that sound. He's heard it before, on that night in Birmingham, when the flames climbed high and children screamed for help that never came. He knows the difference between wind and terror, between nature and human suffering. He stands slowly, his eyes scanning the white horizon. The crying continues, weak but persistent. Somewhere out there in the frozen wasteland, someone is dying. The truck can wait. Hayes grabs his rifle and starts walking toward the sound. Behind him, after a moment of hesitation, the others follow. They move through the snow, leaving the broken truck behind, drawn toward something they cannot yet see but can no longer ignore. The wind carries the crying closer now, and nothing will ever be the same. The snow thickens as they move deeper into the abandoned landscape. Each step sinks into white powder that reaches their knees. Hayes leads, his rifle ready, eyes fixed on the gray horizon where broken buildings emerge like tombstones. The crying grows louder. Not one voice, many children, multiple children. "Sarge, we got no orders for this," Wilson whispers, his voice tight with fear. "We supposed to hold position, wait for the convoy." Hayes doesn't respond. His jaw is set, his mind made up. The sound pulls him forward like an invisible rope. Private Davis, the medic, catches up beside him. "If they're German kids, Bobby, we can't just what?" Hayes cuts him off, his voice low and sharp. "Leave 'em to freeze." The question hangs in the frozen air. Nobody answers. They reach the edge of a destroyed village, houses reduced to rubble, walls collapsed, roofs caved in. The bombing here was recent. Smoke still rises from scattered fires, and the smell of burnt wood fills their nostrils. The crying echoes from somewhere ahead, distorted by the wind and the maze of ruins. Jackson's hands tighten on his weapon. Could be a trap. Germans use all kinds of tricks. Hayes knows this. He's seen booby traps, ambushes disguised as mercy. The war has taught him to trust nothing. But that sound, those voices, they carry something that cannot be faked. Pure animal terror. The sound of children who have run out of time. He remembers Birmingham again, standing in the street, watching flames devour wood and flesh, while grown men in white hoods laughed. He was 12 years old, powerless, invisible. His father held him back, whispering, "Nothing we can do, son. Nothing we can do." That phrase has haunted him ever since. They move through the ruins carefully, weapons raised. The village is a graveyard. Bodies frozen in the snow, half buried. An old woman clutching a photograph. A man face down in the mud. The crying intensifies. It's coming from beneath them. Hayes stops in front of a collapsed building, what used to be a school, judging by the broken chalkboard visible through the debris. Part of the structure has fallen into a basement, creating a dark cavity in the ground. He kneels at the edge, peers into the darkness. The crying stops. Silence. Then movement. A small face appears in the shadows. A girl, maybe 7 years old, her skin blue with cold, her eyes wide with terror and hope. She stares at Hayes. He stares back. Behind her, more faces emerge. Children, dozens of them, huddled together in the frozen darkness like animals waiting for death. "Jesus Christ," Davis breathes. The girl extends a trembling hand toward Hayes. In her other arm, she clutches a burnt doll, half its face melted away. She doesn't speak. She doesn't need to. Hayes understands the language of desperation. It's the same in Birmingham, in Berlin, everywhere humans suffer. Wilson grabs his shoulder. "Bobby, we can't. Command will." Hayes shrugs him off, already moving toward the opening. "Start clearing the debris," he orders. "We're getting them out." "They're Germans, Sarge. The enemy." Hayes turns, his eyes hard as iron. "Ain't no enemy down here. Just kids who ran out of luck." He descends into the darkness. The smell hits Hayes first. Urine, fear, and the sickly sweetness of early death. He drops into the basement, his boots splashing in half-frozen water. The darkness is almost total, broken only by thin shafts of grey light filtering through cracks in the collapsed ceiling. 18 children stare at him. They range from infants to teenagers, pressed together against the far wall like a single organism trying to survive. Their clothes are torn, their faces hollow with hunger. Some shake uncontrollably. Others have stopped shaking, a worse sign. The girl with the burnt doll hasn't moved. She still extends her hand toward Hayes, as if testing whether he's real or another hallucination conjured by a dying mind. Hayes kneels slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. He's learned this in the South, how to move around white fear, how to shrink himself to survive. Now he uses it differently. "It's okay," he whispers, though he knows they don't understand English. His voice carries the only universal language that matters, softness. The girl takes a tentative step forward, then another. Her hand touches his face, feeling the warmth of living skin. Her eyes fill with tears. Above, the others are working. The sound of wood being moved, debris shifted. Davis calls down, "How many higher, Sarge?" 18, Hayes replies, his voice thick. "Maybe more." He hears Wilson curse. Jackson says something he can't make out. The work continues. Hayes moves through the basement, checking each child. A boy, maybe 10, sits completely still, his eyes open but unseeing. Shock. A toddler lies in a teenage girl's lap, breathing in shallow gasps. Hypothermia, advanced stage. 2 more have blue lips and dilated pupils. They're not just cold, they're dying. "How long you been down here?" Hayes asks, knowing they can't answer. The teenage girl, the only one who seems capable of speech, whispers something in German. Her voice is raw, broken. Davis drops into the basement beside him, medical bag in hand. He takes one look around and his face goes pale. "Jesus, Bobby." "Half of them won't make it through the night." "Then we don't have a night," Hayes replies. We move now. Move them where? We're 40 kilometers from any aid station. The truck barely runs. We got no supplies. No. We move them now, Hayes repeats, his voice harder. Above, Wilson's face appears in the opening. Sarge, we got a problem. The truck can't carry all this weight. We barely got space for us and our gear. Hayes looks at the children, then at his rifle, at his ammunition, at the supplies they've been hauling, rations, equipment, everything the army considers essential. He makes the calculation instantly. Dump it, he orders. What? The ammo, the supplies, everything that ain't medical or fuel, dump it. Wilson's eyes widen. That's destruction of military property. They'll court-martial. They're gonna court-martial a dead man. Hayes climbs back up, his voice carrying across the ruins. These kids got maybe 2 hours, maybe less. I ain't explaining to God why I chose bullets over babies. He pulls the teenage girl up first, then reaches for the toddler. The child is limp, barely breathing. Jackson and Wilson exchange glances. Davis is already moving, making space in the truck bed. One by one, they lift the children out of the frozen tomb. Some cry, others are too weak for tears. The girl with the burnt doll refuses to let go of Hayes's hand. When the last child is up, Hayes stands in the empty basement for a moment. The water reflects his face, a young black man, thousands of miles from home, breaking every rule to save the children of his enemy. He climbs out into the white light. The real journey is about to begin. The truck groans under the weight of 18 bodies that shouldn't be there. Hayes has stripped everything. Ammunition crates stacked in the snow, ration boxes abandoned, even their personal gear reduced to essentials. The children huddle in the truck bed, wrapped in every blanket, coat, and tarp they could find. The engine coughs and sputters, then roars to life. 40 kilometers, Davis says, studying a torn map, through enemy territory, past God knows how many German patrols. Hayes shifts into gear. Then we better pray they got more mercy than we do. The truck lurches forward, tires struggling for grip on the icy road. Inside the cab, silence. In the back, the sound of children whimpering, too cold and frightened to understand they've been saved. Wilson sits in the passenger seat, his rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the white landscape. This is insane, Bobby. You know that, right? Been insane since we stepped on that ship to Europe, Hayes replies. Want this just a different kind? The road is barely visible under fresh snow. Trees lean overhead like skeletal fingers, and every shadow could hide a weapon. They pass abandoned vehicles, frozen corpses, the debris of a civilization eating itself. 10 kilometers in, the engine stutters. Hayes pumps the gas pedal. The truck shudders but continues. Behind them, Jackson pounds on the cab roof, a signal. Hayes glances in the mirror. One of the children, a small boy, has gone completely limp. Keep moving, Davis shouts, already working in the back. Don't stop, Bobby, don't stop. Hayes presses harder on the accelerator. The truck protests but obeys. 15 kilometers. The fuel gauge drops toward empty. The sun, already weak, begins its descent toward the horizon, temperature falling, death closing in from every direction. Then, voices ahead. Hayes slows. Through the snow, figures emerge. German soldiers, maybe a dozen, rifles ready. A roadblock, there's no way around. Wilson chambers around. We're dead. Hayes stops the truck 20 meters from the soldiers. His heart hammers, but his hands stay steady on the wheel. He's been here before, facing men with guns and authority, men who see him as less than human. Birmingham taught him how to survive this moment. Stay calm, stay visible, stay alive. A German officer approaches, weapon raised, shouting commands Hayes doesn't understand. Behind him, his men fan out, surrounding the truck. The officer reaches the passenger side, peers in at Wilson, then at Hayes. His eyes narrow. Black American soldiers, deep in German territory. Easy targets. Then from the back, a voice. The teenage girl stands, unsteady, and speaks in rapid German. The officer's expression changes. He moves to the truck bed, pulls back the tarp. 18 frozen children stare back at him. The girl speaks again, her voice desperate, pointing at Hayes and the others. The officer's face transforms, confusion, then something else. Recognition. Understanding. He lowers his weapon. The German soldiers step back, creating a path. The officer looks at Hayes one last time. He doesn't salute, doesn't smile, but he nods, one soldier to another, across the unbridgeable divide of war. "Kinder," he says quietly. "Sie retten Kinder." They're saving children. Hayes shifts into gear and drives through the enemy line. Nobody fires a shot. The Allied medical station appears like a mirage through the snow. Canvas tents, red crosses painted on white fabric, the organized chaos of war's mercy. Hayes drives straight to the entrance, horn blaring, scattering medics and officers. Before the truck fully stops, he's out, pulling children from the back. "Hypothermia. Multiple cases. Need help now." Medical staff rush forward, then freeze. German children, enemy civilians, in an American truck driven by black soldiers. A white captain pushes through the crowd, his face reddening. "Sergeant, what the hell is this?" 18 children, sir. Found them in a collapsed basement. They need immediate... I can see what they are. The captain's voice is ice. "What I want to know is why you transported enemy civilians without authorization, why you abandoned your post, why you destroyed military property." Hayes stands at attention, but his eyes don't drop. "They were dying, sir." "That's not your concern. Your concern is following orders." Davis carries the limp toddler toward a tent. A nurse moves to help, but the captain blocks her path. "Nobody touches them until I get answers." The toddler's lips are blue. Her breathing has nearly stopped. Hayes steps forward. "Sir, you can arrest me after, but these kids need help now." "You don't give me orders, Sergeant." "Ain't giving orders him, sir. Just stating facts." The standoff stretches. Officers gathering, enlisted men watching, the children shivering in the snow, caught between salvation and bureaucracy. Then a British medical officer pushes through, ignoring the captain entirely. He takes one look at the children and starts shouting orders. "Get them inside. Hot water bottles, blankets, warm fluids. Move." His staff responds instantly. Children are swept up, carried into tents. The American captain tries to object, but the British officer cuts him off with a glare that could stop artillery. "You want to debate protocol while children die? Be my guest. But do it somewhere else." Inside the medical tent, organized chaos. Nurses work frantically, stripping frozen clothes, wrapping small bodies in heated blankets. The toddler is placed on a table, a doctor working to restore her core temperature. Her heart rate is dangerously slow. Hayes watches from the entrance until a military policeman grabs his arm. "China Sergeant Hayes, you're to come with me." Wilson, Jacksons, and Davis are already being led away, hands empty, weapons confiscated. Hayes doesn't resist. He takes one last look at the girl with the burnt doll. She's awake now, color returning to her cheeks. When she sees him being taken, she cries out, reaching toward him. A nurse holds her back, whispers comfort in broken German. The MP leads Hayes to a small tent, pushes him inside. The white captain is there, along with a major Hayes doesn't recognize. "Sergeant Robert Hayes, 761st Tank Battalion." The major reads from a file. "You abandoned your position, transported enemy civilians without orders, destroyed military equipment, endangered your unit." He looks up. "These are court-martial offenses." Hayes stands silent. "You have anything to say for yourself?" Hayes meets his eyes. 23 years of Birmingham, of Jim Crow, of fighting for a country that doesn't fight for him. All of it compressed into this moment. "I've been disobeying wrong orders my whole life, sir. This ain't new." The major's jaw tightens. "Take him to holding." As Hayes is led out, he hears it, a child laughing in the medical tent. One of the older boys, warmed and fed, making some joke that gets the others giggling. The sound of life, continuing. Hayes smiles. It was worth it. 3 days in a cold tent, hands cuffed to a cot, waiting for judgment that never quite arrives. The British medical officer submits a report praising Hayes's actions. A chaplain visits, says nothing, leaves a Bible. Wilson, Jackson, and Davis are released with reprimands. Hayes waits alone. On the 4th day, the major returns. No cuffs this time, just a manila folder and tired eyes. "All 18 survived," he says without preamble. Chow the toddler was close, but she made it. Hayes nods, allows himself to breathe. You put me in an impossible position, Sergeant. What you did was heroic and stupid in equal measure. The Major sits on the opposite cot. Command wants this buried. No report, no medals, no mention. You understand why. Hayes understands perfectly. Black soldiers saving German children while white officers stood by, not the story the army once told. You're released. Rejoin your unit. This conversation never happened. Hayes salutes and walks out into the pale sunlight. His crew waits outside, smoking cigarettes, grinning when they see him. Told you they wouldn't hang a hero, Jackson says. Ain't no hero, Hayes replies. Just a mechanic who heard crying. 3 months later, Germany surrenders. Hayes ships home with the 761st, invisible in the victory parades, unnamed in the celebrations. The war ends, but Birmingham hasn't changed. The same segregated buses, the same poisoned water fountains, the same hatred wearing different uniforms. He finds work in a Chicago garage, fixing engines, keeping his head down. The children in the basement become a dream, then a memory, then something he's not sure really happened. Years pass. Career comes and goes. The 50s blur into routine, work, church, a quiet apartment, evenings listening to the radio. He never marries, never speaks about the war. The other men from his unit scatter across the country, chasing the freedom they fought for but never received. Then, in 1960, a letter arrives. The envelope is worn, forwarded through 3 addresses before finding him. German postage. Careful handwriting. Hayes opens it with shaking hands. Dear Sergeant Hayes, I do not know if you remember me. I was 7 years old, in the basement, with the burnt doll. You carried me through the snow. My name is Greta Zimmerman. I am a teacher now in Frankfurt. I married, I have children. I live because you saw me as human when the world said I was enemy. I have searched 15 years to find you, to say thank you, to say you changed everything. I read about the marches in your country, about the Reverend King, about your people fighting for dignity. I think of you every day. I think, if that man could show mercy when he had every reason for hate, then mercy is possible. You saved more than children that day. You saved the idea that kindness can win. With eternal gratitude, Greta. Hayes reads it 3 times. Then he walks to the window and watches the Chicago streets, where a newspaper boy shouts about sit-ins in the South, about buses and lunch counters, and a movement building like a wave. He touches the letter to his chest and closes his eyes. The war never ended. It just changed its name. Decades collapse like dominoes. The 60s burn with rage and hope. Hayes watches King on television, sees Bull Connor's fire hoses, recognizes the same hatred he fought overseas now unleashed on American soil. He marches in Chicago, joins protests, gets arrested twice for sitting at the wrong counter. The letter from Greta remains in his wallet, creased and fading. He writes back. A correspondence begins, slow and steady across the Atlantic. She sends photos of her children. He sends articles about the movement. 2 people connected by a moment in the snow, watching their worlds transform. The 70s bring exhaustion. The 80s, reflection. Hayes retires from the garage, his hands gnarled with arthritis, his back bent from years of bending over engines. He moves to a small house in Ohio, near where Jackson settled before he passed. The 761st Tank Battalion finally receives recognition in 1978, a presidential unit citation, decades overdue. Hayes attends the ceremony, stands with the few survivors, accepts applause from a country that's still learning his name. But the children in the basement remain his secret. The army kept its silence. History moved on, until 1989. A phone call. Greta's voice, older but unmistakable. Robertie, I'm coming to America, and I'm not coming alone. 3 weeks later, Hayes opens his door to find 18 adults standing on his lawn, German accents, American clothes, holding flowers and photographs and tears. The girl with the burnt doll is now a grey-haired woman. She steps forward first, takes his weathered hands in hers. We found each other, she says. All of us. We never forgot. They spend 3 days together, sharing meals, sharing stories, filling 44 years of silence. They bring a bronze plaque engraved with 18 names and a single line. Gerettet von Sergeant Robert Hayes, 1945, saved by Sergeant Robert Hayes. They install it in his living room, beneath the faded photograph of him in uniform. They embrace him, these strangers who carry his mercy in their very existence. Children who became parents, who created families, who built lives on the foundation of his single choice. "You didn't just save us," Greta says on the last evening. "You proved that kindness can win, even in darkness, even when no one's watching." Hayes dies 3 years later, in his sleep, in winter. The funeral is small, a handful of neighbors, some veterans, a local pastor. But a plane arrives from Germany carrying 18 wreaths. And the church fills with people who cross an ocean to honor a mechanic from Birmingham who heard children crying and refused to walk away. His grandson, 8 years old, stares at the flag-draped coffin and whispers to his grandmother, "Grandpa saved the enemy." She kneels beside him, touches his face with the same gentleness Hayes showed in that frozen basement. "No, baby. He saved what was left of the world." Outside, snow begins to fall, soft and silent, covering everything in white. And in that whiteness all the old borders disappear,